Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to talk about what might be the best bass fishing lure of all time. Catches me so many bass every single year. It works on every single body of water, and I pretty much always have one tied on. So stay tuned, let's get right into it. So as you could probably guess, this guy here is the Texas rig. But it's not just anything on a Texas rig. There's a couple things that I do with my Texas rig to help me catch more fish, and more importantly, the bait selection is what I'm really talking about in today's video. So first, let's go ahead and jump into the rod and reel setup that I like to use here. It's fairly basic, but it's just something that I'd like to talk about here because it does help in Texas rig fishing. So I have a 7'3" medium heavy here, just a basic flipping rod and light flipping rod. I don't really go too heavy on my stuff here. You can do a lot with a Texas rig, and we're going to talk about that in today's video, but 95% of my Texas rig fishing is done with this rod right here. Occasionally I'll go much heavier if I'm punching. It's still considered a Texas rig, but that's what I'll punch with it, or flip to heavier grass, I'll go a little bit heavier on my rod. Or if I'm fishing some sparser cover or some spawning fish or some lighter line that I need to use, I might go a little bit lighter. But like I said, 95% of your fishing will be covered with this rod right here. And then for the reel, you have to have a 7:1 or higher gear ratio. These fish are going to eat it. They're going to swim right at you. You're going to have to yank them out of cover. Ultimately, you're going to want a fast gear ratio to be able to keep up with these fish, be able to fight them properly, and also to make a lot of flips throughout the day. So I can flip this out there and reel it back in much faster with a 7:1 than I could with a 6 gear ratio. So I can cover a lot more water and make a lot more casts, which could lead to more fish in the boat at the end of the day. So that's what I like to go with there. And then for line, again, 95% of the time, 20-pound test straight fluorocarbon is what I'm going to throw. Occasionally, I'll vary it up. I'll go to 15-pound test fluorocarbon if I'm fishing some lighter Texas rigs, or I'll go up to 65-pound braid if I'm fishing some heavier cover. But day in and day out, this setup right here, the 7.3 medium heavy with 20-pound test straight fluorocarbon, will do everything I need to do with this setup. When it comes to the hook and weight selection here, I almost always peg with this technique that I'm going to be doing here with this bait selection. So I do have a peg on here. If you're going with a lighter weight, very lightweight, you can go with no peg, but usually I'm flipping some heavier cover with this rig here. So I'm going to go with the peg just to keep my thing all together here when it falls through, doesn't get hung up in any brush piles, anything like that. The big key that I want to talk about here, this is one thing that I do with my Texas rig that often gets overlooked, and that is your weight selection. Today we have a 3/8 ounce on here. I'm fishing like 6 to 10 foot of water, and I'm fishing grass edges. So that heavier weight allows it to get down and through the grass. The key with a Texas rig is you want to use the lightest weight you can, but still be able to get through the cover. That is the biggest key when it comes to fishing a Texas rig. So if you can throw a 5/16 ounce weight and it'll still go through the cover like a 3/8 will, I will go to the 5/16. So you will get more bites the lighter the weight you have. That more natural fall will get you more bites. The only time that I go heavier than what I want to is when I'm punching or looking for a reaction bite. If I can get through with a 3/8 and I want a reaction bite out there, I'll go to a half, and I'll really make that bait fall fast and try and get those fish to just commit to it really quickly. But more often than not, the lighter the weight you can use, the better off you're going to be. So I keep a wide range of weights, everything from a 1/16 all the way up to an 1.5 ounces, and everything in between. So you're going to want to have as many different weight sizes as you want. You don't need all of them like I have, but if you can get all of them, I highly recommend it. It will be a noticeable difference in the amount of fish that you catch. But if you can only get a few, pretty much an 1/8, a 3/16, a quarter, a 3/8, and a half will get most of the job done with those weights right there. That's pretty much what I throw day in and day out. And then I have a 3/0 Gamakatsu Superline hook on here. I like the extra wide gap hooks as opposed to like a round bend worm hook. I don't know why I can just never rig a bait straight on those, and I seem to lose a bunch of fish on them. I know some people love them. It's either a love-hate relationship with those. Either people love the extra wide gap hooks or they love the round bend hooks. Whichever you prefer, go ahead with that. The only other one that I really like to use is a straight shank hook. A lot of times if I'm flipping some heavier grass, I'll go with that straight shank hook because your hook's actually buried rather than through the plastic, so it never has a chance to catch in that grass and it comes through a lot cleaner. So oftentimes I'll either use the extra wide gap hook or I'll use the straight shank hook. Those are my two go-tos there. anywhere between a 3 and a 5/0 size, depending on what you're doing, what your bait selection is. For me, I like a 3 or 4/0 99% of the time. Then when it comes to my bait selection, there are two that I like to pick from. The number one that I really like to throw, I've been doing this for years, I fish it on pretty much every lake I go to, and that is just going to be a 6 cents prawn or any type of beaver bait like this. Straight tails, no appendages, it comes through cover amazing. It'll go through any type of cover you could possibly put it through. It is just a fantastic bait to get bites. The only downside to this bait is it has absolutely no action whenever you're dragging it on the bottom. So more often than not, this is going to be the bait I choose when I'm getting a vertical bite. And what I mean by a vertical bite is when I flip in, that bait falls down and they're going to eat it on the fall, or I'm going to reel it back in and make another flip. If I'm making a lot of flips in and out of cover over and over and over again, that's when I'm going to go with this prawn. It's going to fall through easier. It's going to get through all the types of cover. I'm not going to get hung up or make bad casts as often. If I'm going to be dragging the bait or fishing it along the bottom or through brush piles down deep or something like that where I'm moving the bait a lot more and need some action, that is when I'm going to go with this bait here. That is the 6 cent stroker craw, and the benefit of this guy here is it's the same shape-ish and size of that beaver. It's a 3.3 inch bait, so it's a little bit smaller, but the main benefit here is it has a double tail grub as the tail here. So it looks like little crawfish claws, but more importantly, it moves a ton of water as you're dragging this thing on the bottom. It pretty much has the same appearance as a beaver, not much different on the hook there, but it will just get a lot of bites when you're dragging it because it actually has some action. It can make it look like the crawfish, it can make it look like a bluegill, it can do whatever, and we're going to talk about that here very shortly. But those are my two bait choices there. That's all I really choose from when I'm fishing. Whether it's dragging, I'm going to go with the one that has the action, or if I'm flipping, I'm going to go with the one that doesn't have the action. When I've talked about this mimicking pretty much anything on the bottom, that is one of the reasons I love a Texas rig so much, and it's probably one of the greatest baits for bass fishing ever. It just always gets bites for one. I've never been anywhere where I haven't been able to catch a fish on a Texas rig. It just always works. Some way or another I can alter this technique to get bites on it, but it just mimics all types of forage. More importantly, the ones that fish feed on most. Really doesn't mimic shad. That's the only one that it has a hard time mimicking, but you can get white baits and stuff to be able to flip with on your Texas rig. More importantly, when you're fishing very shallow like this, those fish are feeding on bluegills heavily or crawfish. Those are like the two things that they'll be feeding on most when they're living very shallow. And these imitate bluegills and crawfish better than anything else. They do a great job. They have the same body presence, the same fat appearance. They have very good action, or they just have that very flat, round appearance like a small bluegill would. Just overall mimics bluegills and crawfish exceptionally well, and that's what allows you to get so many bites on a Texas rig. And the last thing that makes the Texas rig one of the greatest bass lures of all time, we kind of touched on it a little bit already. It comes through every single type of cover that is imaginable. There's not one piece of cover that a Texas rig cannot come through. While it will get hung up, and if you're not getting hung up with a Texas rig, you're not putting it in the right spot, it mostly will come through all types of cover. Where a crankbait, you could throw in these lily pads, it's not coming through. Or a spinnerbait, you could throw it in some rocks and it's probably gonna get snagged in between the rocks by wedging in there. This thing will come through everything. You can drag it on rock piles, you can flip lily pads, you can flip wood, you can skip it under docks. Pretty much any piece of cover that you come up on the bank, you can throw this. So you can literally go to a lake and only throw a Texas rig, put this in your hand, no matter what lake it is, you will probably catch bass. And that is why I feel the Texas rig is probably one of the greatest baits ever made. And when it comes to color selection for a Texas rig, that's the one thing we didn't really touch on, is keep it simple. That's the number one thing that I really like to do with my Texas rigs. I very much keep it simple, and as you can see with these two colors right here, I have a green pumpkin base and a black base, and that's it. I pretty much throw a dark bait, something black, black and blue, black and purple, it doesn't matter what color glitters in it, something with black in it, and then something with green pumpkin in it, whether it's green pumpkin magic like this color here, actually this is called green pumpkin burst, or if it's something with green pumpkin red, green pumpkin green, whatever color glitter, or just straight green pumpkin, it does not matter. If you have those two colors right there, use the black in some dirtier water and the green pumpkin in some cleaner water, you'll be catching more fish on a Texas rig in no time. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video talking about the Texas rig and why it's an excellent bait for catching a lot of bass no matter where you fish. Ponds, creeks, lakes, doesn't matter. This bait will catch them. If you want to see another bait that might be one of the greatest baits of all time as well, go ahead and check this video out right here. Leave a like down below if you enjoyed today's video, and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my fishing videos coming up.